Gentlemen, thank you both for joining us. Let me start by asking you both to briefly sum up the case for an extra runway. Stewart, you go first.
Well, I think the case at Gatwick is a really compelling case. I think for many years we've seen efforts to expand Heathrow and every one of those has failed. At Gatwick, this is the first time we've been in this competition to see if we can get the second runway. That's because we're in separate ownership now. And really, competition is at the heart of everything that we're about. We can build the runway faster than Heathrow. We can have it open at least 5 years sooner. We can build it at less than half the price. We don't need any public subsidy. And because we're to the south of the city, we don't have the huge environmental impacts that Heathrow will have on the population of London. We're a tiny fraction of the environmental impact. So if we're serious about building a runway for the first time since the 1940s, Gatwick is the place to do it.
OK, John.
Well, this is a question of national importance, and it's about our future in the world. Do we want to be right to the heart of the global economy, as we have been for 200 years, or are we prepared to be on the branch line to growth and give to other people what could be ours? Only Heathrow expansion can get Britain to the growing markets of the world in Asia, North America and South America. Only Heathrow expansion can help us to tackle the balance of payments deficit, because we're the UK's biggest port, and if we want to export, we need to expand at Heathrow. And only Heathrow can connect all of the UK to global growth by connecting cities that have been cut off from Heathrow, such as Inverness, the Isle of Man, Jersey, back into Heathrow, but also add more flights and more competition to the airports in Scotland, in Northern Ireland, in other parts of the UK, so that we can connect all of Britain to global growth. And only Heathrow can do that.
OK, let me ask you both, assuming that we do get the go-ahead for an extra runway at one of your airports. If you lose out, John, will you be perfectly content that it's Gatwick rather than no extra capacity at all?
Well, we actually have no issue with expanding Gatwick. We think it's a great airport, but it doesn't do what Heathrow does. Heathrow gets us to those global markets that Britain needs to trade. If we're not connected to growth, we're not going to be able to grow the British economy. And that's the prize that only Heathrow can deliver.
Stewart, let me put that to you as well. I mean, if you lose out, are you perfectly happy that Heathrow would get another runway? Would you rather that than no extra capacity?
Well, I think it's incredibly important that an additional runway is built this time around. Certainly the businesses that I've talked to up and down the length and breadth of the country emphasise that the most important thing is that we don't have another report gathering dust. That's what happens previously when Heathrow's tried to get the additional runway every single time. And what we're saying is, a decision for Heathrow right now is basically a decision for further delay, and we'll all be back looking again at this in 10 years' time. Whereas a decision for Gatwick is actually a decision for a deliverable option, because we're taking into account both the economic benefits. Gatwick would generate over £100 billion of economic benefits to the entire UK, but we're doing that in a way in which is sensitive to our communities by minimising dramatically the environmental impacts that go hand in hand with aviation.
Right. Let me show you both. We've got, let's have a look at a poll that the Institute of Directors has carried out in the past couple of months. So it's found out that 75% of its members had flown for business use in the past year, with more than a third of those making more than 5 round trips. But only 3% thought that the current situation is enough to ensure the UK's long-term growth capacity. And when it came to having to choose either the West London site or its rival in Sussex, 61% of members favoured expansion at Heathrow and 39% Gatwick. Well, Stewart, it sounds like the IOD and its members are coming down for Heathrow.
Well, given the fact that Gatwick is currently constrained with just one runway, whereas Heathrow has 2 runways, you can see that when we just look at the numbers in that very direct manner, the weighting, of course, is going to work in Heathrow's favour. In actual fact, with 39% of the IOD membership supporting us, we've got an incredible momentum to our campaign to get this next runway. And we've certainly made the most progress in stating our case. We've only been working on this for the last 2 years. Heathrow have been working on this for decades.
Let me put one of Stuart's points to you, John, which is that a runway at Gatwick is going to be far less costly than it is at Heathrow. I mean, that's quite a key consideration, isn't it?
It is, but this is private funding that is going in here. And it's not cheap, nor is any solution here. £16 billion of private investment. And it's similar to what we have done here already. You can see behind us Terminals 5, Terminal 2. While we were doing those, we built new rail links, new road connections. We'll be doing again what we have done before. We've proven we have the capability to do this. We're very good at it. But let me pick up another thing Stewart raised. Gatwick says that we can't deliver as quickly. We absolutely can. This can be delivered, new capacity here at Heathrow in 2025, exactly the same timescale that Stewart is talking about. That's a real prize for the UK.
Right. Stewart?
Well, in terms of the cost of the facility, John talks about £16.8 billion. Recently, E.C. Harris, a construction consultant, did a piece of work for Gatwick looking at the Heathrow plans and said, in actual fact, they're probably short by about £5 billion of additional investment required. And even the Airports Commission themselves identified £5.7 billion of public subsidy that would be needed for improvements to the surface access to the road and the rail networks to and from Gatwick. So I think the costs that John talks about are somewhat less than they actually would be if you were to go ahead and build the runway. But in terms of airport charges, today Heathrow has the most expensive airport charges of any airport in the world at £22. Gatwick's charges are only £9. With expansion at Gatwick, our charges would go up to somewhere between £12 and £15, whereas Heathrow's charges would escalate to somewhere of the order of £35 to £40, making it significantly more expensive than the next most expensive airport in the world.
John, do you want to come back on that?
Well, I don't recognise Stuart's figures, and our figures are significantly lower than that. But I don't want to put my consultants against his consultants. Look behind us. We have done this before. We're good at it. We deliver on time, on budget, to a fantastic quality. We know what we're doing here. We can deliver by 2025.
OK, let me put some questions from our viewers in. We've got one from Bill Thompson from the Wirral, and he says Munich is in fact a far more superior experience than Heathrow could ever hope to be. And how come it's cheaper for me to fly to the USA via Munich than Heathrow if I fly from Manchester? And there's one here from Lucy Mitchell. She says Heathrow needs 4 runways to compete with European airports. Gatwick needs 2. Thousands of jobs depend on it. Well, you've got a supporter there. Do you want to come back on that question concerning Manchester?
Well, I think the answer probably lies with air passenger duty, and British passengers pay the highest air passenger duty in the world, and we're exporting jobs and growth in doing so. But let me come to the other point. We are the most efficient 2-runway airport in the world. We do as much with our 2 runways today as airports in Europe with 5 or 6 runways do. With 1 additional runway here, we will have more capacity than Paris or Frankfurt or Schiphol. That allows us to win this race for growth. We can beat our competitors in Europe and make sure that Britain stays right at the heart of the global economy.
And Stewart made a very good point there about how public money would be needed in terms of road building and stuff. I guess that applies to you both, though, doesn't it? Is there a danger that whichever one of you gets the go-ahead, the European Commission is going to come down with some state aid ruling against expanding either of you?
Exactly, and at Gatwick we don't require any additional public subsidies. We've had our plans checked out with the Highways Agency and Network Rail, and all of the investment that's currently planned is sufficient not only for the airport growth at Gatwick with the 2nd runway, but also for the background growth. Whereas at Heathrow, of course, it's a very different situation. The additional runway, or even the runway extension, sees the runway be built over the top of the M25, requiring the tunnelling of the M25. That's a big bill, and it's going to cause a lot of congestion if it were to happen.
The road and rail links to Gatwick are by no means perfect, though, are they?
They're not, but the investment that's going in is enormous. So if you look at rail, by 2018, the number of seats going through the station will have doubled. By 2030, the capacity will have tripled. You'll have a train leaving Gatwick once every 2 minutes to go into London. And, of course, you've got the advantage of not only being able to go to Victoria, but also being able to go into the city on the Thameslink line. OK, we've got a comment here. The budget airline Flybe Newsroom says you should ask Heathrow and Gatwick what they would do to support regional connectivity.
Well, we want to be able to support regional connectivity by having more capacity. If we don't have the space here, we're not going to be able to welcome important customers like Flybe, like EasyJet, to come and do what they do so well. We want more competition here. We are having to turn away airlines who want to come and service passengers at Heathrow. The demand is here. Let's expand Heathrow and let competition work.
Right, John, well, I've got one here from your MP, Mary McLeod, whose constituency includes Chiswick and Isleworth, and she says children at schools in my constituency are struggling to learn because of aircraft noise. How can you justify putting up to 260,000 more flights over the heads of these children? Wouldn't it be better to spread the pain?
Well, actually, Mary is a fantastic local MP. I spend a lot of time with her. And because she raised this issue with me, I spent my first day visiting 2 of our local schools. Because the local schools are part of our community. A quarter of the kids there are the kids of people who work at the airport. many of them will come to work at the airport in the future. So I want to make sure we're giving them a great education, and they are getting a great education. We are insulating the schools so that they're not affected by noise and they have a good learning environment. But what we also want to be able to do is to give them a great future as well. 40,000 new jobs for local school kids coming from expansion. That's a huge prize. And what I want to be able to do is to make sure that one day, one of the kids in the primary school today comes to do my job. That would be a fantastic prize for the local community.
I think this issue of noise is a massive issue, Ian. If you look at the plans that John has at Heathrow, because of its location directly to the west of the City of London, it means that with the third runway, up to 350,000 new people will be newly impacted by noise. Whereas if the expansion goes ahead at Gatwick, where it's more deliverable and likely to happen, only some 17,000 people will be impacted. And it's this issue of noise that has really ruled Heathrow out time and time again, and it's no different today.